And one of the things I say about critical theorists, that if it was a lens, that it might be useful sometimes to just peer through that lens, but it's a corneal transplant.
That's a good metaphor. Yeah,
it becomes the only way.
Yes.
And I've seen, one of the things that I've seen with students in my own teaching experience is, I've had critical theorists in my classes, and whenever they raise their hand, I could almost verbatim tell them what they're going to say, the response that they're going to give to whatever was said.
Yes.
Well,
then we need to understand why it is so seductive.
That's my point. It troubles me how seductive it's been, and it also, I grapple in my own self with the amount of genuine injustice in the world that takes place on a daily basis. And I mean, for instance, their attacks on capitalism, to me, the corporate world today is so powerful, and to use a favorite term in that world is hegemonic. This idea where monoculture becomes so imperious, and we've seen so many. I mean, I'll give you an example. When I was young, one of the treats in my experience was to go to a bookstore. Bookstores have pretty much been wiped out in the United States because of these corporations. So small bookstores are not able to survive. So now you had Borders, but then Borders goes bankrupt, and then now we're left with Barnes and Noble, and so if you go in, who's picking those books? Who's actually choosing what books? Like if you go, for instance, to the teen section, it's almost all about vampires and really weird occultic stuff. It's not like, the Hardy Boys or Nancy Drew mysteries. It's very corrosive ideas. And
we've slightly changed the topic now. We're not really talking about this postmodern obsession with power.
Right.
We're talking about change in the structure of life.
Right. But for me, a lot of, I'll give you an example. Herbert Marcuse, who I'm not a fan of by any stretch, but when I read some of his works, I was struck by real insights about things that were very troubling about American culture. One-dimensional man, this idea of a consumer and life as consumption, and losing meaning. I mean, his solutions is a whole other problem. And this is something I think that's very seductive, is that the critical aspect of Marxism and neo-Marxism has always been, it's always had a resonance in a lot of people. There's something very, very powerful about it. When you get to solutions and how we deal with these things, we're in another realm. But I think if conservatives don't really address the real serious critiques that are there about the status quo.
Yeah, I think you're right. They have perhaps neglected those critiques, but as I was saying earlier, the purely negative approach to the status quo is simply going to perpetuate this negativity, and has done. If you're not... The typical conservative, in my reading of events, is someone who looks around himself and he finds things that he loves, and he thinks, well, those things are threatened, they're vulnerable, I've got to protect them. And it's not often that you find on the left somebody who looks around and finds things that he loves. It's always something that's gone wrong, something that is even hateful, and you've got to mobilize against it. If you've lost any sense that actually the world is lovable and that there are things therefore to be rescued in it, you have actually lost the sense of why there is such a thing as a community in the first place. And that, I think, is one of the things that I felt very strongly throughout my life, that there really are wonderful things that we've inherited. All Americans, whatever position in society they are still heirs to something rather remarkable. A rule of law which goes on perpetuating itself from generation to generation. If only people knew how rare that was, they would see that they've got to fight to preserve it. And the same with so many other institutions that we inherited.
I couldn't agree with you more.